Hey everybody, Chad at Turner's Warehouse, and today I'm going to show you how I do my CA finish. There's always a million ways to do it, but I'm going to show you how I do it. So what I've got here is a dyed stabilized blank. It's a beautiful burl blue dyed stabilized. I've turned it with carbide and I sanded it with 600. That's all I've done up to this point, so we're going to jump right in. And for this I'm going to use BSI CA and I'm going to use paper towels. Now, a lot of people use different things, blue shop towels or cloths or whatever. Use whatever works for you. I'm going to use paper towel because that's what I like. And the first thing I'm going to do is just put a little bit of thin CA. This is BSI. And I'm just going to let that soak in. Now, this super thin CA cures really fast. So you kind of saw it flashing off there. And it's probably dry to the touch. It is. But even so, in between, I'm going to use the Accelerator. This is the BSI Instaset. I'm just going to use barely a squirt. And I'm going to do that in between every coat. So I'm going to let this spin for a sec. And I'm going to grab a new paper towel. And I'm using the InstaFlex CA. This is a great CA for pens because of the flex characteristics. You see I just put a line on the towel. And I'm going to start by pushing in one end of the CA onto the blank. And I'm going to come across and just kind of float it. Now what I want to be careful of is I don't want to put the CA on and then push hard and push it all off the ends. So speaking of the ends, I'm going to touch my pad just on the end of the wood, but I don't want to hit the blank to make sure I don't have any CA on the ends, and it didn't seem to. So in between coats, I'm going to spray. Just a tiny bit is all you need. Let it sit a sec. I'm going to put a new line on here. And then I'm going to, like I said, push it in on the start, carry it on over, and then by the end I've got the whole thing on there. And what I'm doing is just floating that CA on there. I'm kind of looking for like an orange peel texture when I'm done. And I think that was coat 2 or so. Let's do 4. We're going to do 4 coats. I'm going to do another line, push it on there, and before I do that, the Accelerator, I'm going to touch the ends, quick spray, and then we'll do the 4th one. Now, a lot of times I hear people say they did 15 coats or 20 coats or whatever. I don't really think you ever need that. If you were using thin, you might have to do more. This is a medium, but you should never do 15 or 20 coats. That just doesn't do you any good. Something else is wrong if you're having bad luck with that many coats. So I'm going to put one more line on here, push it over, make sure I got it nice and even, touch those ends. And then Amy, I'll have you back up for this last spray. The last one I like to do a tiny bit more, just because I want to make sure that I'm nice and coated. And now I'm going to use some 800. So once this is good and it's dry, there's no wet, there's a little bit of Accelerator on there. You can kind of see a shine on my finger, but it's definitely not sticky or tacky. I'm going to use some 800 wet sandpaper, and all I'm doing is trying to make sure that that surface is flat. So if you remember earlier I said I want that orange peel look. So what I'm doing now, I'm just putting a little bit of pressure, not a lot, and I'm just flattening it out. So I'm keeping it wet, I'm keeping it moving. And the reason I always do this wet is I think it looks better as far as the sanding and polishing, but also it keeps any dust down in the water so I don't breathe it. All right, let me do it underneath so you guys can see. So I'm not pushing real hard, but you can still see the white here. That's the glue. That's like when you sand resin. It's coming off, but I don't want to sand through it. So by using 800 and light pressure, I'm way less likely to sand all the way through that finish. Now what I'm doing is stopping this because I want to feel it, but I want to kind of wipe it off with my hand. See those shiny lines? I don't know if the camera can pick it up, but what I've got is, those are low spots. So I've got round radial lines, and you might think it's from the sandpaper, but it's not, especially this 800 doesn't do that. That's from the paper towel and applying it. So now I'm just sanding by hand with the direction of the lathe here. There's not really grain direction in burl, not so much. But what I want to do is make sure that I flatten all that out, and by drying it, I can see if I have any more of those shinies. And that looks pretty good. So I think we're okay. So you can see it barely took any sanding. I didn't have to run the lathe very much, and I'm running about 750 to 850. But if I had to, I could keep sanding, or if I had one spot or one little line that I saw, I could keep sanding. And by hand sanding or sanding really slow, you're not risking taking off all that material like you do when you're running the lathe full speed. So now I'm going to use some Zona paper. If you guys have watched any of my videos before, you know I like Zona paper. The first grit is like 600-ish, and so I got to be careful with the first couple. I don't want to take a lot of material off. So I'm going to come on here, and I'm going to use this, and I'm applying even pressure, but not crazy pressure, and I just want to flatten it out, and I'm just making sure that my piece feels good. Oh, and I don't have anything here, and that looks pretty good. All right, so I'm going to move on to the black, and there's 6 grits, so you want to just work through the colors. And the first couple I'm going to be real light with, and then the last few I'm going to be a little longer and heavier, and that's how I'm going to get my really nice shine. So I'm sanding with this, but I'm being real gentle. And I can feel with my fingers, it is feeling really smooth, so it's going well already. Try to sand underneath for everyone. You can already start to see the shine through the water. And if that doesn't make any sense, sometimes water will make it look shiny, but once it starts to shine on its own, it looks different than just shiny with the water. And I can already see the underneath is starting to look real good. All right, so we're moving through these pretty fast. These will take just an extra second on. But this stuff is great for resin blanks or any other kind of resin hybrids, CA finish. I don't use Zona on just wood alone, but any stabilized wood I will, and it looks really good. All right, this is going to be a beauty. So I'm on the last 2 grits here, and I don't know what the second to last is, but the last grit is equivalent to like 22,000 sandpaper. So I mean, we're really polishing this off nice. And I'm keeping it wet. It keeps it cool. It keeps it smooth, keeps the dust off, all kinds of stuff. Now, if you're doing CA finish, once you get really good at it, you can probably do a 2-tube pen in about 5 minutes, maybe 6-7 minutes, if you're not talking to a camera the whole time like I am right now. But if you're focused, these don't have to take a long time. I think that's the other thing I hear most is people spend half an hour on a CA finish and they don't like the way it looks. That's just something's out of whack as far as the process. It shouldn't take that long. All right, that's looking pretty good. Now you can, if you need to, you can use a little like plastic polish or something on this. I'm not going to, and I rarely do. But let's get a piece of paper. So one thing I'm not going to do is like dry this off running. I'm just going to kind of dab it because I want to get the water off, but I don't want to scratch my finish with this paper towel because this paper towel is fairly rough and aggressive. So there is a CA finish. And I would want to inspect it and make sure it's perfect. If there were any little spots, I could go back and touch them up. But from what I'm seeing here, it looks pretty darn good. And I mean, it's really shiny. So if you like a really shiny finish, CA is probably for you. It does feel more like a resin blank than a wood blank to the touch, but that's fine if that's what you're into. But it does look shiny. You got to give it credit. CA is hard to beat for shine, but it also protects it. It's a plastic coat over the wood. Now, a couple quick tips. You want to make sure there's no CA on the end of your pen. If you do have CA, either a buildup that's like rounded over or little bits that are flaking from the process, you need to cut those off or sand them off very carefully because you don't want to chip up your finish. There's nothing worse than doing a nice CA finish and having the ends look bad. And what'll happen is when you assemble your pen, you're gonna push on that CA and it's gonna chip or separate from the wood. It'll look terrible. So make sure there's nothing here. The other thing is, what was the other thing I was gonna say about CA finish? Oh, CA finish can crack. So the reason I use the flex is because it's less likely to crack. It's less brittle than the regular, although the regular is fine in most circumstances. However, I have had people who have had a pen in like freezing conditions and it has cracked weirdly. And I did do a side-by-side of flex and non-flex, and over like 2 years, the regular one just spidered a few places and the flex didn't. So if you have the option, I would use flex. If you don't, use whatever you have. But that is a CA finish in a few minutes. I don't know how long that took, but not too long. So if you have any questions, let us know. Thanks for watching. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. And if you have not already, subscribe to the channel. Thanks, everybody.